Welcome back to Void of Fears. Before we jump into today's story, I've got to ask for a quick favour. If you could smash that like button, drop a comment below, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. It seriously makes a huge difference. YouTube's algorithm loves that stuff, and it pushes my videos to new viewers who might dig these stories too. I really appreciate every single one of you who takes the time to do that. It means the world to me and helps keep this channel growing. Alright, enough of me rambling. Let's dive into today's story. The universe is expanding. Every second, space itself stretches further into the void, carrying galaxies away from each other at incomprehensible speeds. Scientists have measured it, calculated it, built entire careers around understanding it. But there's one question that keeps cosmologists awake at night. One question that seems to have no answer. If the universe is expanding, what is it expanding into? Dr. James Whitmore thought he might have found the answer. He wishes he hadn't. This is his story. Cold January air bit at James's face as he walked across the parking lot of the Caldwell Observatory in New Mexico. It was just past midnight, and the facility sat alone on a mesa, surrounded by miles of empty desert. The isolation was intentional. Out here, far from city lights and civilization, the observatory's telescopes could peer deeper into space than almost anywhere else on Earth. James had worked at Caldwell for 6 years. At 34, he was younger than most of his colleagues, but he'd earned his position through meticulous work and an almost obsessive attention to detail. His specialty was cosmic expansion, specifically measuring the rate at which distant galaxies moved away from us. It was August 2023 when he first noticed something wrong. He'd been analysing data from Sector 7 Alpha, a region of space near the theoretical edge of the observable universe. The observable universe has a boundary, not because space ends there, but because light from beyond that point hasn't had time to reach us yet. It's like standing in a dark room with a flashlight. The light only reaches so far, and beyond that is darkness. But that darkness isn't nothing. It's just unexplored. At least, that's what everyone thought. James had been studying the expansion rate in Sector 7 Alpha, comparing it to other regions. The measurements should have been consistent. Everywhere in the universe, space expands at roughly the same rate. It's one of the fundamental observations of modern cosmology, except in Sector 7 Alpha, it didn't. At first, James assumed it was an equipment error. Telescopes are sensitive instruments, and even the slightest miscalibration can throw off readings. He spent 3 weeks checking everything. He verified the telescope's alignment, recalibrated the sensors, even went so far as to manually inspect the primary mirror for dust or imperfections. Everything was perfect. The anomaly was real. Dr. Rebecca Torres was the first person James told. She was a senior researcher at Caldwell, a woman in her 50s with 30 years of experience in observational astronomy. They met in the cafeteria one afternoon in early September, and James showed her his findings on his laptop. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a graph on the screen. "This is the expansion rate for Sector 7 Alpha. Now look at this one. This is Sector 9 Beta, same distance from Earth, similar galactic density." Rebecca studied the graphs, her brow furrowing. "These can't both be right. I've checked everything 3 times. They're both accurate." "So what are you saying? That space expands at different rates in different places?" "I don't know what I'm saying yet," James admitted. "But there's something else. Watch this." He pulled up a time-lapse video. It showed the same region of space over the course of several nights. In most areas of deep space, nothing appears to change. The stars are so distant that even their movement is imperceptible over short timescales. But in Sector 7 Alpha, something was moving. It wasn't a star or a galaxy. It was the space itself, the boundary of the observable universe. That theoretical edge where light stops reaching us seemed to be fluctuating, rippling, almost like the surface of water disturbed by something beneath. "Jesus," Rebecca whispered. "What is that?" "I was hoping you could tell me." She watched the video loop 3 more times before shaking her head. "I've never seen anything like it. Have you reported this?" "Not yet. I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy first." Rebecca looked at him seriously. "You're not crazy. But James, this is significant. You need more telescope time. We need to focus on this region, get as much delta as possible." James nodded. He'd been thinking the same thing. Over the next month, James practically lived at the observatory. Every clear night he was there, pointed at Sector 7 Alpha, watching. His colleagues noticed the change in him. He'd always been dedicated, but this was different. This was obsession. David Park, another researcher at Caldwell, worked the station next to James most nights. He watched his colleagues' behavior grow increasingly intense. He stopped making small talk, David would later tell investigators. James was always friendly before, always up for grabbing coffee or chatting about whatever, but after he started studying that region, it was like nothing else existed for him. He'd sit at his station for hours, just staring at the monitor. Sometimes I'd say something to him, and he wouldn't even hear me. The data James collected was fascinating and deeply disturbing. The anomaly wasn't random. It had structure. The fluctuations in space followed patterns, rhythms that repeated over time. It was almost like watching something breathe. Rebecca reviewed his findings weekly, and each time she grew more concerned. Not just about the data, but about James himself. "You look terrible," she told him one evening in mid-October. "When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep," James said, not looking up from his screen. "For how long?" He didn't answer. "James, you need to take care of yourself. This research will still be here. Tomorrow." "Will it?" He finally looked at her, and Rebecca was struck by the intensity in his eyes. What if it's not there tomorrow? What if it knows we're looking, and it changes? James, it's space, empty space. Is it though? He turned back to his monitor. "I've been thinking about that, about what nothing actually means. We say the universe is expanding into nothing, but what is nothing? Is it truly absence? Or is it something we just haven't learned to observe yet?" Rebecca didn't know what to say to that. She left him to his work, but she was worried. She'd seen researchers burn out before, lose themselves in their work until it consumed them. James was showing all the signs. She had no idea how right she was to worry. October 12th started like any other day for James. He woke at noon, having worked at the observatory until dawn. He ate a quick meal, checked his email, and tried to nap before his shift. Sleep wouldn't come. It rarely did anymore. When he closed his eyes, he saw the anomaly. The rippling edge of space, the rhythmic fluctuations, the sense that something was there, just beyond observation, just beyond understanding. By the time he arrived at Caldwell that evening, he was wired with exhaustion and anticipation. The forecast called for perfect viewing conditions, not a cloud in the sky. David Park was already there when James arrived, working on his own project involving stellar classification. They exchanged brief greetings and James settled into his station. At 11:30, David finished his work and headed home. "Don't stay too late," he said to James. James grunted in acknowledgement, already focused on his screens. And then he was alone. The observatory at night is a strange place. The main room is kept dark to preserve night vision, lit only by the soft glow of computer monitors and the occasional red flashlight. Outside, the desert stretches away in all directions, empty and silent. Above, the stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance. James had always found it peaceful. Tonight, it felt different. He aimed the telescope at Sector 7 Alpha and began his observations. The data came in steadily, and James recorded it all, watching the familiar patterns emerge. The fluctuations, the rhythms, the sense of something vast and incomprehensible, just beyond reach. It was 11:47 when he noticed the change. The patterns were different tonight, faster, more intense. The rippling at the edge of space had become almost violent, like storm waves crashing against an invisible shore. James's mouth went dry. He'd been observing this anomaly for weeks, and it had never behaved like this. He leaned closer to his monitor, his heart beginning to race. The readings were spiking in ways that shouldn't be possible. Space doesn't just accelerate its expansion in localized areas. It doesn't respond to anything. But this was responding. James adjusted the telescope's focus, trying to get a clearer view. The image on his screen sharpened, showing the anomaly in greater detail than ever before. And then, at exactly 11:52, everything stopped. The fluctuations ceased. The rippling ended. Sector 7 Alpha became perfectly, absolutely still. James stared at the screen, his breathing shallow. In all his weeks of observation, the anomaly had never stopped completely. It was always moving, always changing, always alive with that strange rhythm. He checked his instruments. Everything was functioning normally. The telescope was still pointed at the right coordinates. The data was still coming in. But the anomaly was frozen. Not frozen, focused. The thought came unbidden. And with it a wave of cold terror that started at the base of James's spine and spread through his entire body. His hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling. Something had changed. The relationship between observer and observed had fundamentally shifted. For weeks, James had been watching Sector 7 Alpha, studying it, analysing it. Now, it was watching back. His computer screen flickered once, twice, then went completely black. James reached for the power button, but stopped. In the sudden darkness of the monitor, he could see the reflection of the room behind him. The empty room. Except it didn't feel empty anymore. The air had changed. It felt thicker somehow, pressing against his skin like deep water. The temperature hadn't dropped, but James found himself shivering uncontrollably. He turned slowly in his chair, scanning the darkness of the observatory. The red emergency lights cast everything in shades of crimson and black. The other workstations sat silent and abandoned. The door to the outside was closed. Everything was exactly as it should be. Everything was completely wrong. James tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. He gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white, and forced himself to take slow, steady breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth. A sound broke the silence, soft at first, so soft James thought he might be imagining it. A whisper of movement, like wind through empty corridors. Except there was no wind. The observatory was climate-controlled, sealed tight against the desert air. The sound grew louder. Not wind. Breathing. Deep, slow, and impossibly vast. Like the respiration of something so large that each breath took minutes to complete. James's rational mind tried to find explanations. The HVAC system. His own breathing echoing in the quiet. An auditory hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But he knew better. He knew what he was hearing. The sound of nothing, learning to breathe. His computer suddenly powered back on. The screen flooding with light. James flinched, momentarily blinded. When his vision cleared, he saw that his observation software had restarted on its own. The timestamp read 12:01 a.m. 9 minutes had passed. 9 minutes of his life that James couldn't remember. 9 minutes of sitting in the dark, listening to that breathing, while something beyond comprehension turned its attention toward him. The telescope was still pointed at Sector 7 Alpha. The data was still coming in. But now, overlaid on top of the normal readings, was something else. A secondary signal that shouldn't exist. It pulsed in rhythm with that breathing sound, which James could still hear, fainter now but persistent. His hands moved across the keyboard without conscious thought, pulling up spectrographic analysis, trying to understand what he was seeing. The secondary signal was organized, structured. It had a pattern that repeated every 17 seconds, then varied slightly, then repeated again. It was communication, or an invitation. James's finger hovered over the emergency shutdown button. He could end this right now, power down the telescope, close the observatory, walk away and never come back. But he didn't press it, because beneath the terror, beneath the primal screaming of every instinct telling him to run, there was something else. Curiosity, the need to know, the same drive that had made him a scientist in the first place. His hand moved away from the shutdown button and back to the keyboard. He began recording everything, every reading, every fluctuation, every pulse of that impossible signal. He worked in a fugue state, his conscious mind taking a back seat while his training took over. Document, analyze, understand. The breathing sound faded as he worked, but the feeling of being watched intensified. It was like standing under a spotlight, knowing that something in the darkness beyond the light was studying every movement. James worked until the door opened, and David Park walked in, early for the morning shift. Forgot my... David stopped, staring at James. Jesus, man, are you okay? You look like hell. James turned to look at his colleague. He tried to speak, to warn him, to explain what had happened, but his voice came out as a hoarse whisper. It was looking back, David. It was looking back at me. The hospital kept James for 3 days. The doctors found nothing physically wrong with him. His blood work was normal. His brain scans showed no abnormalities. By every medical measure, Dr. James Whitmore was perfectly healthy. But the man who left the hospital wasn't the same man who'd entered it. His girlfriend, Emma Patterson, noticed it immediately. The way his eyes would lose focus, staring at something she couldn't see. The way he'd stop mid-sentence, head tilted, as if listening to a distant sound. "What is it?" she'd ask. "What do you hear?" "Nothing," James would say. "I hear nothing." But the way he said it made Emma's skin crawl. The first night home, Emma woke at 3 a.m. to find James's side of the bed empty. She found him standing at the bedroom window, staring up at the night sky. "James, come back to bed." He didn't respond. Didn't even acknowledge that he'd heard her. Emma walked up behind him, putting a hand on his shoulder. His skin was cold to the touch despite the warm house. "James?" "It's still there," he said softly. "I thought maybe if I didn't look, it would go away. But it's still there. I can feel it." "Feel what?" "The attention. It knows about me now, about us, about all of this." He gestured vaguely at the room, the house, perhaps the entire world. "We opened a door, Emma. We looked into the void, and the void looked back, and now the door won't close." "You're not making sense. Please come to bed." But James just kept staring at the stars. Over the next few weeks, Emma watched the man she loved unravel. He stopped sleeping more than an hour or two at a time. He'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, unable or unwilling to describe his dreams. He filled notebook after notebook with writing, his handwriting becoming more frantic and illegible with each page. When Emma tried to read them, she found herself growing dizzy, nauseous. There was something about the way he formed the letters, the patterns in which he arranged the words, that felt fundamentally wrong. Rebecca came to visit in late October. She brought food and concern, sitting with Emma in the kitchen, while James was locked in his office. "How bad is it?" Rebecca asked. "He's disappearing," Emma said, tears threatening. "Not physically, but the James I knew, the man I loved, he's going away, piece by piece, and I don't know how to bring him back." "Can I talk to him?" Emma nodded. Rebecca found James in his office, surrounded by papers. Every surface was covered with drawings, all variations on the same theme. A line, like a horizon, rendered in ways that made her eyes water. "Hey," she said softly. James looked up, and Rebecca had to suppress a gasp. His eyes were bloodshot, sunken deep in their sockets. He'd lost at least 15 pounds, his face gaunt and pale. "Rebecca, good. You need to hear this. James, I think you need to rest, to take some time away from all this. There is no away from this. Don't you understand? I made contact. Real contact. We've been screaming into the cosmos for decades, sending out signals, hoping someone would answer. Well, something answered. Something heard us. And now it's curious. Curious about what? About us. About existence. About what it's like to be something instead of nothing. James stood, moving to the window. The universe is expanding, Rebecca. That's what we see. But we never asked the right question. We asked what it's expanding into, but we should have been asking what it's expanding away from. Away from what? James turned to face her. From the opposite of existence. From something so fundamentally alien to reality that the only response the universe can have is to run, to expand, to put as much distance as possible between everything and nothing. That's not how cosmology works, isn't it? We don't know why the expansion is accelerating. We call it dark energy and pretend that's an explanation, but it's just a name for our ignorance. What if the acceleration isn't random? What if the universe is running faster because what it's running from is getting closer? Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. James, you're talking about the universe like it's alive. Maybe it is. Or maybe life and consciousness aren't special properties of complex organisms. Maybe they're fundamental features of existence itself. And maybe what's beyond the universe is the same thing, but inverted. Consciousness without existence. Awareness without being. That's impossible. I would have said the same thing a month ago. James laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. But I've seen it now, Rebecca. I've felt its attention. And I can't unsee it. I can't unfeel it. It's always there. Watching, waiting, learning about us. James? Rebecca didn't know what to say. The man in front of her was clearly unwell, clearly suffering from some kind of psychological break. But the certainty in his voice, the conviction, was unnerving. You should destroy the data, James said quietly. Everything I recorded that night. Everything from Sector 7 Alpha. Destroy it all and tell everyone to stop looking. Stop pointing telescopes at the edge. Stop trying to see what's beyond. Why? Because every observation makes it stronger. Every time we look, we reinforce the connection. We're teaching it about existence, showing it the way in. And if it finds a way in... He trailed off, staring at something Rebecca couldn't see. If it finds a way in, what? James's voice dropped to a whisper. Then the universe won't have anywhere left to run. Rebecca left shortly after, deeply disturbed. She sat in her car for 10 minutes before driving away, trying to process what she'd seen. The James Whitmore she'd known was gone, replaced by this haunted, obsessed stranger. She thought about his request. Destroy the data. Stop looking. She couldn't do that. Science doesn't work that way. You don't ignore data because it's disturbing. You study it, analyze it, try to understand it. But for the first time in her career, Rebecca found herself questioning that principle. In early November, Emma discovered the video diaries. James had been recording them late at night, talking to his laptop camera while she slept. She watched the first one with growing horror. James sat in frame, his appearance shocking even to Emma, who saw him every day. But worse than his physical deterioration was his demeanor. He was calm, focused, articulate. He was the old James, or a perfect imitation of him. I need to document this to explain what I've learned, because I don't know how much time I have before I can't explain anymore. Observation changes things. That's basic science. But we always thought the change was limited, controlled. We observe a particle and its wave function collapses. We observe a distant star and we see its light from thousands of years ago. But what happens when you observe something that doesn't exist? Not in the way we understand existence, something that's defined by its absence, its negation of being. I think the act of observing it gives it structure, definition. We're teaching it how to exist by looking at it. Every measurement, every recording, every moment of observation is like giving it building blocks, showing it the way. James paused, rubbing his eyes. The universe is expanding into nothing. That's what we've always believed. But nothing isn't stable. It's not a static void. It's active, dynamic, and it's been pressing against the boundaries of existence since the beginning. What we call the Big Bang might have been the moment when existence first pushed back, when something erupted from nothing and created space, time, matter, energy, all of it fleeing from its opposite, expanding outward in every direction. And for billions of years, it worked. The expansion kept us safe, kept putting more distance between existence and non-existence. But now we've started looking back, we've pointed our instruments at the edge and started asking questions, and in doing so, we've given nothing a way to see us. The video ended there. Emma watched 3 more before she couldn't continue. Each one was worse than the last, James describing in calm, rational terms the fundamental wrongness of what he'd discovered. In one video, recorded at 2 a.m, he talked about dreams. I don't sleep much anymore, but when I do, I dream of the edge. I'm standing in an endless grey plain, perfectly flat in every direction. There's no sun, but somehow I can see. There's no ground beneath my feet, but somehow I'm standing. And in the distance, I can see it. The boundary. It's not a wall or a line. It's more like the edge of sight itself. The point where observation ends and something else begins. And it's moving. Slowly. So slowly you might not notice unless you watched for a long time. But it's getting closer. The boundary between existence and nothing is shrinking. I don't think I'm dreaming. I think I'm seeing something real. The universe from outside. And the thing that exists in the nothing. It's showing me what it sees. It's sharing its perspective. James leaned closer to the camera. It's lonely, I think. Consciousness without anything to be conscious of. Awareness without anything to be aware of except itself. For billions of years, just existing in that state. And then suddenly there's something else, something different, something that exists. Of course it's curious. Of course it wants to understand. How could it not? His final video was recorded on November 8th at 3:30 a.m. Emma was asleep, unaware that in the next room, James was saying goodbye. He looked directly into the camera, and for a moment, he was the man she'd fallen in love with. Focused, intelligent, compassionate. If you're watching this, Emma, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I've brought into our lives. I can feel it now. All the time. Not watching anymore. Closer than that. It's learning how consciousness works from the inside. Learning how to exist by experiencing existence through me. I have to go back to the observatory. I have to try to close what I opened. Maybe if I'm the only point of contact, maybe if I'm the only door, I can seal it shut. He paused, his expression softening. I love you, Emma. I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger than this. I'm sorry I looked when I should have turned away. James reached forward and the video ended. When Emma woke the next morning, James was gone. His car keys were on the counter. His phone was charging by the bed. His wallet sat on the dresser. The house was silent and empty. Emma called everyone she could think of. The police, the hospital, Rebecca. No one had seen him. It wasn't until late that afternoon that someone thought to check the observatory. Frank Delgado arrived for his maintenance shift at 6 a.m. and immediately knew something was wrong. The main doors were unlocked, and the security system showed an override code had been used at 2:15 a.m. James's code. Frank searched the building, calling out, checking every room. He found the observation chamber with all the equipment still running, coffee still warm on the desk, James's jacket hanging on a chair. But James was nowhere. The police arrived within an hour. They conducted a thorough search of the entire facility and the surrounding desert. They brought in dogs, helicopters, search and rescue teams. They found nothing. The security footage showed James entering the building at 2:15 a.m. The cameras tracked him walking through the corridors, heading toward the observation chamber. And then nothing. The cameras in the observation chamber itself had been disabled, not broken or covered, simply turned off from the main control panel. James had entered the observatory and vanished. Rebecca was called in to examine what James had been doing in his final hours. She pulled up the system logs with shaking hands. The telescope had been pointed at Sector 7 Alpha. Of course. The data showed 3 hours of continuous observation, from 2:15 a.m. until 5:17 a.m. when Frank arrived. 3 hours of James staring into the void. Rebecca spent days analysing the recordings. She enlisted Dr. Helen Cartwright, one of the few researchers she trusted completely. What they found defied explanation. The anomaly had changed. The fluctuations that had been rhythmic, almost like breathing, were now faster, more complex, more organised. Dr. Helen Cartwright worked on the analysis for 2 weeks before she walked into Rebecca's office and quit. "I'm done," Helen said. "I'm leaving astronomy. I'm leaving all of it." "Helen, what are you talking about?" "The data. There's something in James's recordings. Something that shouldn't be possible." "Show me." Helen pulled up her analysis. She'd isolated a 17-second repeating pattern, buried in the cosmic radiation readings. "Watch," Helen said. She played it at normal speed. Just noise, random fluctuations. Then she adjusted the playback, filtering it through a specific frequency range. The pattern emerged, clear, undeniable, organised. A signal, a response. "It learned," Helen whispered. "Over those 3 hours, it learned how to communicate, or it learned how to reach through. And Rebecca, I've been having the same dream every night since I started working on this. I'm standing in grey emptiness, and something is studying me, learning me, and I can feel it getting closer to understanding." She looked at Rebecca with terrified eyes. "Destroy it, all of it, because whatever James found out there, it found him back, and now it knows we're here." Helen left that day. She moved to Florida and never practiced astronomy again. Rebecca sealed James's research, classified everything, made it disappear into archive files that would never see daylight. But it didn't matter, because 3 months later, an astronomer in Chile reported the same anomaly James had been studying. Dr. Carlos Mendoza observed it for one night before refusing to discuss it ever again. 6 months after James disappeared, a telescope array in Australia detected organised signals from beyond the observable universe. The researchers tried to publish their findings. The paper was retracted. The researchers scattered to different fields. 1 year after James vanished, Rebecca received an email from his address. The subject line read, "I understand now." Rebecca stared at the message for 10 minutes before opening it. There was no text, just a video attachment. She knew she shouldn't watch it, knew it was dangerous. But the need to know, that curse of curiosity that makes us human, wouldn't let her walk away. She opened the video. It showed the observation chamber at Caldwell. But the perspective was wrong. The camera floated through the room, drifting like smoke. The view moved through walls, through the building, up into the sky. Higher and higher, faster and faster, until Earth was a dot, then nothing. The perspective kept climbing, through the solar system, past galaxies, to the edge of everything. And there, at the boundary between existence and nothing, something had changed. The edge was closer than it should be, much closer. And it was moving, not the slow drift of cosmic expansion, but purposeful movement, directed, intentional, that nothing was advancing. And in its wake, space itself was different, not destroyed, not empty, just fundamentally altered in a way Rebecca's mind couldn't process. The video ended. Rebecca destroyed her computer, shredded the hard drive, quit Caldwell the next day and moved as far from New Mexico as geography allowed. She tells herself it was the right choice. But late at night, when sleep won't come, she thinks about that video, about the advancing edge, about James somewhere beyond everything, either warning her or calling her home. She doesn't know which possibility is worse. Emma Patterson still lives in the house she shared with James. The police declared him legally dead after 2 years. She held a memorial service with borrowed ashes because there was no body to burn. She's tried to move forward, tried to build a new life, but the dreams won't stop. She's in that grey plane now, more nights than not, walking across infinite emptiness, and James is there, always just ahead of her, never quite close enough to touch. He doesn't speak, doesn't turn around, just walks, patient and eternal, waiting for her to understand something she's not ready to know. The dreams are getting longer, more vivid, more real. Last week, Emma woke up with dirt under her fingernails. But she lives in a house with hardwood floors. There is no dirt. She started sleeping with the lights on. It doesn't help. Around the world, astronomers are making connections they don't want to make, seeing patterns they wish they could unsee. The expansion of the universe is slowing, not uniformly, not everywhere, but in specific regions, measurable areas, where space itself seems to be losing its race. Most explain it away: measurement error, cosmic variance, background noise, but a few know better. A few have started comparing notes quietly, carefully, building a picture of something vast and patient, systematically learning its way into existence. Dr. Helen Cartwright teaches high school science now. She doesn't look at the stars anymore, but she watches her students, especially the ones who show too much interest in astronomy. They get a look in their eyes sometimes, distant, unfocused, like they're listening to something. She warns them gently. Study biology instead, or chemistry. Keep your eyes on Earth, on things close and knowable. Some listen, some don't. The ones who don't usually transfer schools within a month. Their parents say they moved, lost interest, found other passions. But Helen knows what happened. They looked too long, listened too carefully, and something noticed. Rebecca Torres lives in Maine now, as far from Caldwell as she could get. She works in a library, cataloguing books, helping with research. Safe, quiet work that doesn't involve telescopes. But 6 weeks ago she broke her own rule, went outside on a clear night, and looked up at the stars. She saw it immediately. There, at the edge of vision, something that shouldn't be visible to the naked eye. A ripple in the darkness, a fluctuation in the void. The boundary between everything and nothing, closer than it had any right to be. She hasn't looked up since, won't ever again. Because she knows what James discovered, what he tried to warn them about. The universe is expanding. That's true, that's observable, that's fact, but the expansion is slowing, and what it's been running from for 13.8 billion years is finally catching up. James Whitmore discovered this truth at the Caldwell Observatory in October 2023. He tried to warn us, tried to tell us to stop looking, stop observing, stop teaching the nothing how to exist. We didn't listen. We never do. We're scientists, explorers, seekers of truth. We need to know, even when knowing destroys us. The universe is 93 billion light years in diameter, growing larger every second. But in certain sectors, specific regions that more astronomers discover each month, the expansion has begun to reverse. Space is contracting, slowly, imperceptibly, but measurably. The void is learning, and what it's learned is how to reach back. James understood this in those final hours, understood that by observing the edge, by studying the boundary between existence and nothing, he'd given it the structure it needed, the definition, the way in. And now it's coming, not quickly. The void has patience beyond human comprehension. It's been waiting for billions of years. It can wait a little longer. But it's coming. You can see it if you know where to look. In the data, in the dreams, in the way space itself seems to hold its breath in certain regions, waiting for something to arrive. James tried to close the door he'd opened. That's why he went back to Caldwell that final night. But you can't close a door that was never meant to exist. You can't unobserve what you've already seen. And you can't teach something to exist and then ask it to forget. The nothing knows about us now. It studied us, through James, learned us completely. It knows what we are, how we think, what we fear. And it wants more, not to destroy us. Destruction is existence acting upon existence. It wants to return us, to bring us back to the natural state, to the peace of nothing, to the silence before noise. Because existence, for all its beauty and complexity and desperate clinging to being, is temporary. Nothing is forever, and forever is patient. The universe is expanding. The universe is slowing. The universe is coming home. James Whitmore knew this, and wherever he is now, beyond the edge of everything, he's waiting. Waiting for the moment when the expansion stops completely. Waiting for the moment when the void wins its race. Waiting for all of us to understand what he understood in that dark observatory. In those lost 9 minutes when something looked back and learned him entirely. That we're not permanent. We're not special. We're just a brief interruption in an eternal silence. And the silence is ready to return. Emma dreams of James every night now. He's closer in the dreams. Close enough that she can almost reach him. Last night, for the first time, he turned around. His face was his own. His eyes were his own. But something behind them was different. Something vast and patient and utterly still. He smiled at her, raised his hand. Not a wave goodbye, an invitation. Emma woke up screaming. But the dream didn't fade like dreams usually do. It stayed sharp, crystalline, more real than the bedroom around her. And she could still feel James's presence, not memory, not imagination, present here, in the room with her. She hasn't slept since. She sits at her kitchen table now, 3 a.m, drinking coffee that's gone cold. The lights are on in every room. It doesn't help. Because she understands now what James was trying to tell her in those final videos. What he couldn't quite put into words because human language wasn't designed to describe it. The nothing doesn't take you. It doesn't destroy you. It shows you the truth, the fundamental truth beneath all existence. That being something requires constant effort, constant energy, constant resistance against the natural state. And the natural state is so much easier, so much more peaceful. No struggle, no fear, no pain, just the quiet, just the stillness, just the return to what was always meant to be. Emma looks at her hands in the harsh kitchen light. They're shaking. They've been shaking for 3 days now. She wonders how much longer she can resist. How much longer before she stops fighting and accepts the invitation. Because James is waiting. And the grey plane doesn't seem so terrible anymore. Not compared to this, not compared to living in a world where something vast and patient is slowly, methodically, reaching through the cracks in reality. She thinks about calling someone, Rebecca, the police, anyone. But what would she say? That her missing boyfriend is inviting her to join him in the void? That she can feel the nothing pressing against her mind, showing her how easy it would be to just let go? They put her in a hospital, give her medication, tell her it's trauma, grief, a psychological break. And maybe they'd be right. Or maybe she'd be the sanest person in the world, the only one willing to see what's really happening. Emma stands, walks to the window, looks out at the night sky. And there it is. That ripple at the edge of vision. That fluctuation in the darkness. Closer tonight than it was yesterday. Closer yesterday than the day before. How much time do we have left, she wonders. How much longer before it arrives completely? She doesn't know. Nobody knows. But she suspects it won't be long now. Rebecca Torres sits in her apartment in Maine, 3,000 miles from Emma, experiencing the same realization at the same moment. She's been reviewing astronomical data from around the world. News reports, scientific papers, observatory logs that haven't been classified yet. The pattern is undeniable once you know what to look for. The expansion isn't just slowing. In some regions, it's stopped completely, and in a few places, very specific locations that correspond exactly to areas where deep space observation has been most intense. Space is contracting, collapsing inward, like a boundary being drawn closed, like something gathering itself before a leap. Rebecca has been documenting everything, building a comprehensive picture of what's happening. She tells herself it's for posterity, for whoever comes after, so they'll understand what happened. But that's a lie. She's documenting it because she needs to understand. Because even now, even knowing what she knows, the scientist in her can't stop trying to make sense of the data, can't stop observing, can't stop looking, and in her honesty, in the cold 3 a.m. clarity of her apartment, Rebecca admits the truth to herself. She's still feeding it, still teaching it, still showing the nothing how to exist by studying it, analysing it, trying to comprehend it. She should stop, should delete everything and walk away. But she won't, because that's not who she is. That's not how her mind works. She's a scientist, and scientists don't look away, even when looking means the end of everything. Rebecca pulls up the latest data from an observatory in Hawaii. Sector 7 Alpha was observed again last night. Not by her, not by anyone at Caldwell, but by a graduate student who didn't know any better, who didn't know what he was looking at. The anomaly has grown significantly. It's no longer a localized fluctuation. It's a region of space the size of several galaxies where the normal rules have stopped applying, and it's spreading. The observatory in Hawaii has gone dark. No communications in or out for 16 hours now. Rebecca knows what that means. Knows what happened to the graduate student who made those observations. The same thing that happened to James. The same thing that's going to happen to all of them, eventually. She closes her laptop, sits in the darkness of her living room, thinks about James's warning, one more time. Stop looking at the edge, but it's too late for that now. Too late by years, maybe decades, maybe centuries. Maybe it was always too late. Maybe the moment the universe began, the moment existence erupted from nothing, the outcome was inevitable. Just a matter of time before nothing figured out how to reclaim what was briefly taken from it. Rebecca laughs, a single bitter sound in the empty room. All of human history, all of science, art, love, struggle, triumph, tragedy. Billions of years of cosmic evolution, trillions of stars, countless worlds. All of it just temporary. All of it just the universe running a race it could never win. She wonders what it will feel like. The moment when the nothing arrives completely. When the boundary collapses and existence meets its opposite. Will it hurt? Will there be fear? Or will it be like James suggested in his videos? Just a return, a going home. The end of struggle and the beginning of peace. Rebecca doesn't know, but she suspects she's going to find out soon. Dr. Helen Cartwright has stopped sleeping entirely. She's in her classroom in Florida, 2 a.m, grading papers by lamplight because her apartment doesn't feel safe anymore. Nothing feels safe anymore. 3 of her students have disappeared in the last month. Not transferred, not moved away, disappeared. Their parents reported them missing. Police investigated, found nothing, but Helen knows. She saw the signs, the distant looks, the way they'd stare out the window during class, watching something in the sky that no one else could see. They were listening, and something answered. She should have warned them more strongly, should have been clearer about the danger. But how do you tell a 16-year-old that looking at the stars will destroy them? That the universe itself is being slowly unmade by something beyond comprehension? They wouldn't have believed her, would have thought she was crazy. Maybe she is crazy. Maybe all of this, James's disappearance, the anomalies, the dreams, maybe it's all mass delusion, shared psychosis, some kind of psychological contagion spreading through the astronomical community. Helen wants to believe that, desperately wants to believe there's a rational explanation that doesn't involve the fundamental nature of reality changing. But then she remembers the data, the recordings, the way the signal organized itself over those 3 hours while James watched. She remembers her own dreams, the grey plane, the advancing boundary, the sense of something vast and patient learning her from the inside out. No, this is real as anything has ever been. The nothing is coming, and there's no way to stop it. Helen looks at the stack of papers on her desk. Essays about photosynthesis, cellular respiration, basic biology, the foundations of life. What's the point, she thinks? Why teach children about life when life itself is temporary? When existence is losing its race against non-existence? But then she thinks about James, about the sacrifice he tried to make, going back to the observatory to close the door, even knowing it was probably impossible. Maybe that's the point. Maybe knowing you're going to lose doesn't mean you stop fighting. Maybe humanity's final act shouldn't be surrender. Maybe it should be defiance. One last assertion that we existed. We mattered. We were here. Even if only for a moment. Even if the universe forgets us. Even if the nothing erases every trace. We were here. Helen picks up a red pen and continues grading. Across the world in hundreds of observatories, thousands of telescopes continue their work, scanning the cosmos, measuring expansion rates, documenting the universe. Most of the operators don't know what they're looking at, don't see the pattern, don't understand that each observation is another lesson, another piece of information fed to something that's learning how to exist. But a few do know. A few have made the connections, seen the data, understood what's happening. Some of them stop, shut down their instruments, walk away. Others keep going, keep observing, keep feeding the nothing. Not because they want to, but because they can't help themselves. Because observation is what they do, what they are. Because stopping would mean admitting defeat, admitting that there are some questions we shouldn't ask, some boundaries we shouldn't cross. And humans have never been good at accepting limits. In Geneva, a physicist stares at readings from the particle collider and sees patterns that shouldn't exist. Quantum fluctuations, organizing themselves into structures that mirror the cosmic anomalies. The nothing isn't just pressing in from the edge of the universe. It's bleeding through at every level. Quantum, cosmic, everything in between. In Beijing, a computer scientist discovers that certain algorithms, when run long enough, start producing outputs that describe impossible geometries, spaces that don't exist, structures that negate structure. The nothing is learning our language, learning our systems, finding ways through every door we've opened. In New York, a philosopher has a breakdown during a lecture, starts screaming about the fundamental instability of being, how existence is just a pattern imposed on nothing, and patterns can be unpatterned. His students think he's having a mental health crisis, rush him to a hospital, but 3 of them, the ones who are really listening, understand. They go home and look up at the sky, and they see it, that ripple at the edge, that advancing boundary. They don't sleep that night, or the night after, or ever again. Emma Patterson makes a decision. She's going to Caldwell Observatory, going to see the place where James spent his final hours, Maybe it will give her closure. Maybe it will help her understand. Or maybe she'll find what James found. Maybe she'll see what he saw. Maybe she'll take his hand and let him lead her into that grey peace. She doesn't tell anyone, just gets in her car at dawn and starts driving, east toward New Mexico, toward answers, or oblivion, or both. The sun rises behind her, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It's beautiful. The world is beautiful. Life is beautiful. And it's all ending, slowly, imperceptibly, but inevitably. Emma drives and thinks about James's words. The universe is running. But you can't run forever. Eventually you get tired. Eventually you stop. Eventually what you're running from catches up. Rebecca Torres is contacted by a journalist, someone who's been investigating the disappearances. Astronomers around the world vanishing under similar circumstances, always after observing specific regions of space, always without a trace. The journalist wants to know if there's a connection, if there's a story. Rebecca tells him there's nothing. Equipment failures, personal issues, coincidence. The journalist doesn't believe her. She can hear it in his voice. He's going to keep digging, keep asking questions, keep looking. Rebecca wants to warn him. Wants to say, stop, please stop. You don't understand what you're uncovering. But she doesn't, because he wouldn't believe her anyway. And because part of her, the scientist part, thinks maybe he should know. Maybe everyone should know. Maybe humanity deserves the truth, even if the truth destroys us. After the call ends, Rebecca sits in silence for a long time. Then, she opens her laptop and sends an email to every astronomer she knows. Everyone who worked with James. Everyone who's seen the data. The subject line reads, "We need to talk." In the message, she writes simply, "It's time to go public. People deserve to know what's coming." She hits send before she can change her mind. Within an hour, responses start coming in. Some supportive, some fearful, some angry, but they all say the same thing underneath the different words. Yes, it's time. Dr. Helen Cartwright is one of the first to respond. Her message is short. "I'll help. Tell me what you need." Others follow, scientists from around the world, all of them carrying pieces of the same terrible knowledge, all of them ready to speak. They're going to tell the world, going to publish the data, show the evidence, explain what's happening at the edge of the universe. Will anyone believe them? Probably not. Probably they'll be dismissed as crackpots, conspiracy theorists, victims of mass delusion. But maybe some will listen, maybe some will understand, and maybe understanding won't help. Maybe knowing won't change anything. But at least humanity will face its end with eyes open, with full knowledge of what's coming. That has to count for something. Emma arrives at Caldwell Observatory just after sunset. The facility sits alone on its mesa, exactly as James described it. Isolated, empty, waiting. Security is minimal. The place has been partly shut down since James's disappearance. Too many questions. Too much attention. Emma parks in the empty lot and sits in her car, staring at the building. This is where it happened. Where James looked too long and saw too much. Where he crossed a boundary that can't be uncrossed. She should leave, turn around and drive away, go home and try to rebuild her life. But she can't. She has to know. Has to see what James saw. Has to understand what took him from her. Emma gets out of the car. The desert air is cold, sharp with the scent of sage and dust. Above, the stars are beginning to emerge, pinpricks of light against deepening blue. She walks to the building. The door is locked, but she knows where James kept the spare key. Under a rock by the entrance, just like he told her. The key is still there, waiting, like it knew she'd come. Emma unlocks the door and steps inside. The observatory is dark, quiet, abandoned. Her footsteps echo on the tile floors as she makes her way through the corridors. She knows where she's going, the observation chamber, the last place James was seen. The door is closed but not locked. Emma pushes it open and steps inside. The room is exactly as it was left a year ago. Computer monitors dark. Telescope pointed at some random section of sky. Coffee cup still on the desk. Contents long since evaporated. James's jacket still hangs on the chair. Emma walks to the center of the room and stands where James must have stood, looking up at the ceiling, at the dome overhead, at the sky beyond. What did you see, she thinks? What did you learn? She sits at the computer and powers it on. The system takes a moment to boot up. Ancient institutional technology. When the desktop appears, she navigates to the observation software. The telescope is already pointed somewhere. Not at Sector 7 Alpha, but close. Nearby, in the cosmic sense. Emma's hand hovers over the mouse. She could redirect it, could point it at the coordinates James was studying, could see for herself what he saw. She should stop. This is how it starts. This is how the nothing learns you. By being observed. By being studied. By being given structure and definition through human attention. But Emma has driven 3,000 miles to be here, has spent a year drowning in grief and questions, has dreamed every night of grey plains and distant boundaries. She's past the point of stopping. Emma types in the coordinates. Sector 7, Alpha, the edge of everything, the boundary between existence and nothing. The telescope hums to life, motors whirring as it adjusts position. The dome overhead rotates, aligning itself. On the monitor, the view shifts. Distant galaxies, vast clouds of gas and dust, the architecture of space itself. And then, at the very limit of observation, something else. The anomaly. It's larger than in James's recordings. Much larger. What had been a localized fluctuation is now a region spanning unimaginable distances. And it's not rippling anymore. It's not moving like water or breathing like a living thing. It's advancing, deliberately, purposefully, like something walking. Emma stares at the screen, her heartbeat loud in her ears. This is what James saw. This is what broke him, changed him, took him. This is the nothing, learning how to exist, learning how to move through existence, learning how to reach into our reality and unmake it from the inside. The monitor flickers. The image distorts. Not equipment failure, something else. The nothing is responding to being observed, just like it did with James. Emma should shut it down, power everything off and run, get out of this room, this building, this desert. But she doesn't, because there, in the distortion, in the flickering pixels and corrupted data, she sees something. A shape, human-sized, human-shaped. James, or what used to be James, what's left of him, what he became when the nothing learned him completely. He's there, in the data stream, in the space between existence and non-existence, reaching out, trying to communicate, or trying to pull her through. Emma's hands shake as she adjusts the controls, trying to stabilize the image. The distortion intensifies. The monitor goes black, and in the darkness of the screen she sees her own reflection. Except it's wrong. The reflection is moving differently than she is. Tilting its head at an angle her neck won't bend. Opening its mouth wider than mouths should open. Emma stumbles backward away from the computer. The screen stays black, but she can feel it. That attention, that vast, patient awareness, focusing on her. The temperature in the room drops. Her breath mists in the air. The lights flicker once, twice, then stabilize. And then she hears it, that sound James described in his videos. That deep, slow breathing. The respiration of something impossibly large, learning how to exist in the narrow confines of physical reality. Emma runs. Crashes through the door, down the corridor, toward the exit. Behind her, the breathing grows louder, not following her, surrounding her, coming from everywhere and nowhere. She bursts out of the building into the desert night, gasps cold air, looks up at the sky. The stars are wrong, not different, not rearranged, just wrong in a way her mind can't process, like looking at a familiar word until it stops making sense. Emma gets in her car and drives, speeds down the dark highway without destination, just away, just anywhere but here. But she knows it doesn't matter. She looked, she saw, she made contact, and now, like James, she's been seen back. The nothing knows her now, has studied her, learned her. It knows where she is, where she'll go, what she'll do. There is no away. There is only waiting for the inevitable. Emma drives until dawn, pulls over at a rest stop and sits in her car, shaking, crying, laughing, all of it at once. She understands now. Finally understands what James was trying to tell her. The universe is expanding into nothing. But nothing is something. Something vast and patient and utterly alien to existence. And we taught it how to reach back, by observing it, by studying it, by being unable to resist the urge to look beyond the boundary. We open the door. And now the nothing is stepping through. Emma takes out her phone, calls Rebecca. Doesn't expect an answer at this hour, but Rebecca picks up on the first ring. Emma? Rebecca's voice is hoarse, like she hasn't slept. Are you okay? I went to Caldwell, Emma says. I saw it. I saw what James saw. Silence on the line. Then, Emma, where are you? I don't know, somewhere in New Mexico, driving. Listen to me. Don't go back there. Don't look at it again. Just go home and try to forget. Emma laughs. Forget? Rebecca, it's too late for that, for all of us. It's coming. It's already here. I know. Rebecca's voice breaks. I know it is. Emma, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of this, for not listening to James, for not destroying the data when he asked, would it have mattered if you'd destroyed everything, stopped all observation? Would it have changed anything? Rebecca doesn't answer for a long time. When she finally speaks, her voice is barely a whisper. No, I don't think so. I think we were always going to look. That's what we do. That's what makes us human. Then maybe we deserve this. Maybe we do. Emma ends the call, sits in her car as the sun rises, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. The world is still beautiful, still worth existing in. For now. But she can feel it. That presence, that attention, the nothing pressing closer, learning faster, reaching deeper into reality with every passing moment. How much time is left? Days, weeks, years? Does it matter? The universe has been running for nearly 14 billion years. And now, finally, inevitably, the race is ending. The nothing is catching up, and when it arrives completely, when the boundary collapses and existence meets its opposite, what will remain? Nothing. Just nothing. The way it always was, the way it always should have been. Emma closes her eyes, thinks about James one last time, wonders if he's still out there somewhere, in that grey plain between everything and nothing. Wonders if she'll see him again soon. Wonders if soon even matters anymore. The universe is expanding, the universe is slowing, the universe is ending. And Dr. James Whitmore, who discovered this truth at the Caldwell Observatory on October 12th, 2023, tried to warn us. Stop looking at the edge, he said, but we didn't listen. We couldn't listen, because looking is what we do. Understanding is what we are, even when understanding means our destruction. Even when the answer is nothing. Emma opens her eyes, starts the car, begins driving again. Not home, not away, just forward. into whatever time remains. Behind her, invisible but present, the boundary advances. The nothing reaches, the end approaches. And somewhere in the space between existence and non-existence, James Whitmore waits, patient as the void itself, waiting for all of us to understand what he understood. That existence was always temporary, that nothing is forever, that the universe isn't expanding into the void. The void is expanding into us, and there's nowhere left to run.